Hey Postables, you're listening to Deliver Me a Podcast brought to you by Kaycee, Jess, and Cammie. A special thanks to James Jandrish for letting us use the music on our show. Now, grab some yoo-hoo, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, Postables. We are excited today on the podcast to be talking about one of my personal favorites, Truth Be Told. And so this one starts out, we have a very brief intro of, it looks like we're in some sort of battlefield, war zone. We have some soldiers, and quickly we go to 2 years later where we see a young girl and there's a ribbon on a tree and some kids are teasing her about it, and there's a dog, and that's our little teaser in the beginning. So did you guys have any kind of initial thoughts on the short intro of what this one was going to be about?
No, but I was like, those kids are so mean. Shoot, like seriously, you can't. No. And maybe it's because I live in a military town and there's a lot of military and there's a lot of respect for military and there's a lot of military kids who get it. So that to me was just like, are you kidding me? Like, you kids are so
Mm-hmm. I knew that this was going to be a sad story. I knew that this one was going to have some heartbreak to it. Let me just say, I never expected the movie after it. Never in a million years. I thought that was done, that was over, and it was and that was gonna be the end of that one. So never in a million years did I imagine that the movie that comes after this one was going to happen. But I'm also with Kaycee. I got mercilessly teased as a kid, constantly. No matter where I was. I lived in Central America for 3 years, and as a missionary's kid, when I was going to a private school where everyone was either a rich Nicaraguan or an ambassador's kid, just right. I got teased mercilessly, and then I thought when I came back to the States it would be much better, but no one wanted to be friends with a goody two shoes. I'm like, well, what you're doing stinks too. I don't want to get involved in that. So I had good times and stuff, but I was on the outside a lot. So I didn't get my lunch dumped on my head or anything, but I could totally relate to Phoebe. And so but the other thing was, what teenagers pay enough attention to the news to know that was happening? That was the big thing. It was like,
they probably knew her at school, and that would have been big news. And but
that was national news too, because Shane knew all about it, and she had lived in DC.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably why. I mean,
I thought that was interesting because like, teenagers don't sit down and watch the news, so it had to be pretty big.
They got all their Facebook articles going on.
Yeah, and I know schools do like news article reporting and stuff, because that's how we knew the news. And like, I mean, I knew all about like Columbine at a young age, like that was big.
Oh well,
and
yeah, Columbine was,
and like all of that. So I had assumed her story, Randy Linzup's story, the mom, her
had to be on that kind of scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
Yes. So yeah, this movie is different in that it's our only 2-part movie with a letter story. And so, as you'll find out later, the story is not going to be over. But so we have at the beginning also, we have Norman and Rita being awkward. As always. They just had their first like meal date, whatever you want to call it. After their
kiss.
In their first kiss.
Don't forget that, Jess.
After Shane told them, don't let nothing happen between the two of you. And so now they're being super awkward.
Did you have a nice weekend? Like, oh my gosh, how lame can you get? Oh dear.
So yes, they have taken the next step, but they are still not comfortable with each other yet. And we briefly get introduced to our letter story. We have a pretty burned up letter, and Norman is doing his scientific magic on it with his revelation solution to try and start finding out what that is.
Norman Dorman's revelation solution.
But before we get more into the letter story, we have to talk, of course, about Shane and Oliver. And Shane, it's her birthday in this episode. It's her birthday, but she's late to work because she is enjoying her morning on her porch swing.
Oh, yeah. Anything with the swing makes me so happy, guys. Oh,
okay,
man.
did you totally love that? I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but did you totally love that? Number one, she said, it was such a beautiful spring morning, I just couldn't leave my front porch. And you see that totally knowing smile between the two of them. and then Oliver asks, how is your porch swing? Like, oh yeah, it's really great. Yeah, I installed it in the dark, so I was afraid. Actually, it does tilt a little bit. Like, you are so trying to, because then you are so trying to get him to come over to your house because he said, well, I could stop by tomorrow morning after work, and she's totally disappointed. Okay.
Just being brazenly manipulative, you know?
Was she gonna have candles and champagne out there with a nice cozy blanket on the swing to make it more comfortable for two to sit on? You know, what was she thinking?
And then also in this episode, we meet Hazel, I think, for the first time. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And of course, Hazel is all nosy, like, ooh, you got this letter from Steve, and who's Steve? And oh, look at this porch swing, and who's that from? And getting all up in Shane's business.
As the hooked hardy, I must interject here the When Calls the Heart connection. Jill Morrison, who plays Carla in season 1, I loved her character in season 1, and now she's just everywhere. So yeah. So that's Hazel.
Lovely Hazel. And
Nosy
so
Hazel.
Shane gets her letter from Steve, and at this point we don't know who Steve is yet, but we can start making some assumptions pretty easily. And as she's going into the DLO, she drops the letter because otherwise we wouldn't have, the next part of the story of a certain Mr. O'Toole, also known as Papa O'Toole, picking up the letter. And Shane, come back, Shane.
That hasn't been done since the pilot movie. So they
like father, like son.
Yeah.
It made me laugh because Shane turned around and was like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, get the connection. They're connected somehow.
But then Oliver walks out and he looks like he's seen a ghost. Because it's his dad, and they haven't, I don't think they've talked since he was 18.
15 years.
15 years. So we don't know exactly how old Oliver is, and that's the part that makes it kind of difficult to do the math, is we don't know exactly how old he is right now. But we do know that they haven't spoken in 15 years, and that was by Oliver's design. So,
yeah. And so Oliver is like not happy to see his dad. And I think what surprised me the most was what he says to Shane after the very brief interchange with his dad. He's like, nothing he has to say could possibly interest me. And he's just so like, like not talking about this, and I don't care about my dad. And that surprised me. I don't know about you guys. I mean, obviously there's history, but Oliver's a Christian man and believes in forgiveness and doing the right thing, and that was
he kept the wedding ring on. He kept the wedding ring on for a very, very long time with no word at all. So, from Holly. So for him to be that dismissive of his father, you know what struck me is the fact that he is in a line of work that deals with miscommunication, with lost words, with misunderstandings. That's his job, to clear up communication and misunderstandings and all that. And he completely distances himself from his father because of a partial argument that he heard, an assumption, and a bunch of miscommunication.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I was like, oh my goodness, why would you do that? Because he's in the line of work that clears all that up, but yet in his own life, he wants to keep on going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, with part of that is Oliver is not by nature an emotional person. So you have people who are very logical thinkers. So I mean, for him in the DLO, it's a very logical space for him. It's his work. At home, that's where the emotional turmoil is. So I feel like there's a lot of conflict in him because he doesn't have to get emotional connecting people at work with his letters. But
He does anyway. He does anyway, though.
Well, I think pre-Shane, he was very still much
Yeah.
like, okay, we're going to get this done. We're going to send this off. I think
That's
Shane
true.
was the bridge that has brought out a lot of these emotions that he's been burying and that he's been really like ignoring for so long, that when it comes to people like Holly and his father, he doesn't know how to quite deal with it. And his reaction is, his gut reaction is anger.
Right.
And we saw that in From Paris with Love at a very different scale than we've seen it with his dad. Like when I was watching this movie the first time, I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I didn't know Oliver could get mad, but this is a whole different level of mad than From Paris with Love.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very interesting movie in which we get to really peel back Oliver and the layers, because he could be kind of perceived as a boring person, very straight-laced and a brown-noser. But now we're seeing that he is human and he's got these, he's got more layers to him than just a suit and tie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
definitely.
what a time for Oliver. He's just dealt with his ex-wife, now ex-wife, officially gone. And
a day before?
It was a
A
few
week
days.
before? A few
Was
days before?
Few
I don't
days.
even know, but
Because all of this happened on Friday, remember?
Mhm.
From Paris with Love ended on a Friday, well, technically Saturday morning at 2 a.m. And then we come
And it's Monday.
we come back and it's Monday.
And
so
it's Shane's birthday.
This was just 2 or 3 days ago, It's just,
so
this
quite
is
the
a lot to handle.
emotional roller coaster.
Okay, real quick, can you imagine Holly in the airport?
Oh
She's walking into the airport. Joe is walking out of the airport. They like cross paths.
They don't know each other.
They don't know
They
each
don't
other.
know each other.
Or maybe he holds the door open for her or something. I don't know.
Oh my word! Oh,
Wouldn't that be something?
that would be a deleted scene to see. That would be a deleted scene to see.
Oh
Oh
my
my
goodness.
gosh! Oh my gosh!
Yes, so Oliver's been through the emotional ringer in a span of a few days. And
See, we don't think about it. We
Yeah.
don't think about it because they came out, what, a year or so apart? So
I watched them all at once, so
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah.
timeline.
The timeline is a little hard to keep track of.
Mhm.
So
But yeah, so we know clearly there is a lot of water under that bridge. But they kind of table it for the moment because they start digging into the letter story, and Norman's solution starts working. They see that the envelope is addressed to a Phoebe, A-M-I, something about a puppy, could be Guppy, and
come on, Norman. A guppy named Liberty.
Who is
Come on.
puppy?
Going with the dog.
I'm gonna buy a Guppy now and name it Liberty, okay?
Of course you are.
So the letter also mentioned what they assume is a father, Randy, and that Phoebe, when she's ready to hear the truth, call me anytime, is basically the message they're able to get. And so Shane jumps on the dog thing and starts trying to hack into finding the dog registration. And then
Which is really brilliant, actually. I mean, just wow. Some of these ideas that they get on how to find the people, I never would have thought of that. It's just wow. Yeah.
And then Norman goes to visit one of his many cousins, Cornell, to check out the sand, because there was sand in the envelope as well, and they're gonna figure out the whatever this sand is and where it's from.
And he's an expert on dirt.
So they both go on their separate adventures, girls and guys, and through their adventures, they both end up talking. So Rita and Norman end up talking about themselves, and then Shane and Oliver take that and apply it to themselves. So they have like two conversations, one explicit and one implicit.
I love that. I loved how
It's
the scenes
brilliant.
just meshed together and how it was just like crisscrossing everywhere.
And the conversations interrupt one another for an answer. Oh, I love it when
was
movies do that.
amazing.
Oh yeah,
It's such a great way to keep the audience on your toes.
Mm-hmm. And my favorite line is when Oliver's like, "It's a little early to buy furniture." Ooh, maybe it is a little early to start buying furniture. It's like brilliant.
Yeah, I was like, no, don't get cold feet. Don't get cold feet, Oliver. Come on.
That was so funny. I laughed my head off. I still laugh my head off every time I see it. It's just, I think it's a little early to buy furniture. And then all of a sudden this just reality descends on him. Oh my gosh, I bought her furniture. I mean, it's not a sofa. I think we're okay.
Fortunately.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little weird to install it at 2 a.m, but you know.
That was weird.
But what do you guys think about Norman? Like, he just like literally jumps like 10 steps ahead to like, we kiss furniture and kids, and what if we don't like the same, like he just goes so far. And what do you guys think about that and kind of how quickly he went from 0 to 100?
I think it's typical Norman. I mean, Norman's always jumping ahead and doing research and gathering facts and all of that. And, you know, being a foster kid, I can see why he never got into a serious relationship. I mean, Rita even says, I don't think he's ever had an old relationship. You know? And, you know, he's a quirky guy that not a lot of women are going to be attracted to. And when someone is attracted to him, it takes him 4 years to make a move. You know? So a lot of women who aren't Rita are going to lose interest if they are attracted to him. And so all of a sudden he's in his very first relationship probably ever. And he's way too old for this to be a fling. So all of a sudden he's got to start thinking about, and a kid who's never had a father is undoubtedly going to say, what kind of father am I going to be? Now, the fact that he did it after the first kiss and taking her out to dinner is, yeesh, tap the brakes there, buddy. But, you know, he couldn't even wait for you know, them to hold hands first. So I think it's typical Norman. He did go a little quickly on the 0 to 60, but I think it's very typical.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, with him being a foster kid and having a very tumultuous, you know, childhood, probably brings out a lot of fear for the future.
A lot,
you know,
not just in the father area, but just a lot of fear because his future was always so uncertain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Norman's all anxious about things progressing, and then we get more conflict in the next scene. I think it's like a birthday lunch.
Yeah, it's a lunch special,
and who shows up but Papa O'Toole himself, because Shane happened to mention where they'd be, and I just love Oliver's reaction. Yes, macaroni. I don't even know. Like it's a criminal offense.
How dare you? I will say when he got angry with her, I was like, oh my god, like the anger is just building. Building.
It's like, it's her birthday. Calm down.
Oliver!
Not allowed to be angry with her on the birthday. Shame.
That's right.
It's her birthday. She can invite whoever she wants to.
Yeah. You can invite Joe Toole. He's handsome. I would want him to be there.
Still the fox.
And at the same time, Norman and Rita are talking, and they start to put together more pieces about the letter, and they realize that the A was not a middle initial, but the beginning of the addressee's last name. And so they put together that it's Amadon. And that name triggers something for them. It's a big story, so immediately they know who this letter was about and who it was for. Yeah,
can we interject here that once again we got Martha's weaving, because Phoebe is waiting to find out the truth about her mother, and Oliver is finding out the truth about his father, and they're both years apart.
Yep, there's a very a clear parallel there of the kind of journey they're on.
She just does it so well.
Yes, but anyway, so they find out who Phoebe is, and that the letter was in reference to her mother, Lieutenant Randolyn Amadon, who was on a mission, went missing, but there was suspicion that she had just deserted, and there was something else going on there. And so it was really kind of a controversial event that went on. Then the next scene is, I think, the next morning, maybe, when Oliver comes over.
Yes, yeah, because he said it the next morning, I'll come over tomorrow morning before work.
So we're at the next morning, and Oliver comes over because he has to check out the tilt or the squeak or whatever of the porch.
The tilt this time.
The tilt of the porch.
This time it's the tilt.
Shane, sure.
Yeah.
And he gives a bit of a backstory on his father, that his parents divorced when he was 13. He lived with his dad. And his mother, she had left after an argument, got remarried. She had been sending postcards, but then when they moved, he never heard from her again and assumed that his father had not given a forwarding address. So he blames his father completely for losing contact with his mother, that he had been kept from her. And then the largest offense, of course, is not any of that. It is that Joseph O'Toole left the post office, wait for it, guys, to work for FedEx.
We don't say the F word on here.
Shut the front door. And Shane's not buying that. She's like, Oliver, get over yourself. Call your father. And I love how she just shoves the phone into his face. You're leaving this message. You're going to meet your father. Here you go. And Oliver's like,
abhor voicemail.
I abhor voicemail.
Oh man. Yes, that whole scene, there were so many emotions going on, because before we get to that part, Hazel comes by.
Oh my gosh.
And then she's like, oh, is this Steve? And we already know, listen, Oliver's anger is climaxing. That's just a mention of another man while he is fixing Shane's swing. Is like,
that he gave
another
her.
Layer. Yeah, another layer.
That is tantamount to betrayal.
It is. And my favorite part, non-Shane and Oliver related, is when Hazel is checking Oliver out.
She's totally checking him out while he's fixing the swing. Hey, we work together.
We're comrades.
And she's checking out his, because he's bent down on the ground. And it's like, oh, jeez.
Down, Hazel.
Down, girl. Down. Get back to your route. Deliver them letters. Get out of here.
Oh, Hazel. But this is not the last time we will see Hazel meddling in the affairs of Shane Oliver.
Or shooting off her mouth.
So because of, Shane's pushing, Oliver does leave the voicemail for his father and goes to meet him at the park. However, when Oliver is at the park, Shane gets a phone call at the DLO and learns that Oliver's father has passed away. So let's just stop there.
That threw me the loop of my life. I was like, oh my gosh. You're going to have Gregory Harrison in the movie for that short amount of time? That was one of my first thoughts. And then number two was like, he was trying to tell him that he was dying. Oh my gosh. I was a mess. I was a mess.
Yeah, I didn't see any previews to this movie at all.
Nope, me neither.
Because I think I watched it Hallmark Movies Now. So, I mean, I don't know. And I didn't look up any of the credits or anything on IMDb. I was just binging through.
Right.
And when she gets that call and she finds that she's like, Oliver, your dad's died. I mean, what? And that was the other thing, too. Gregory Harrison? You're gonna kill off Gregory Harrison?
I know,
Feed
and
him
that
to Elizabeth? Like, what? So then I thought this movie was just gonna be about Oliver's regret and just him all of that. I was not expecting him to like show up later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did a total jump. I totally had that reaction when he came back on the screen. I was like, what the?
Yeah, when I heard his voice, I was like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, we get that second loop thrown on us like 5 minutes later because Shane tells Oliver. Oliver's like, oh my gosh. And then there he is again. Like, I think my first thought actually when I saw this is like, he's like a secret agent and like faked his own death. You know, being my criminally minded self. I'm like, oh, he faked his death. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
no.
can we just sidestep here for a second? Now, Chandel's theory about plaid, that was the more stress the characters are in, the more plaid they wear. Okay, so did you see that all three men, grandfather, Oliver, and Norman, were all wearing plaid?
I definitely didn't notice Norman. I was focused on Oliver because I saw like when he met his dad, he had another layer of plaid because I think it
He
was
had the plaid suit.
It was the suspenders first for plaid, and then he had the jacket on. I remember like Chandel. I'm like, oh yeah, like more layers, more conflict, wardrobe.
Norman had plaid on the first day, and so in the scene when he's talking about when he first kissed Rita, he had the plaid on, and so I was like, yeah, this is causing Norman a lot of stress. And then the grandfather, he had plaid on when you first see him. And so it's like he's dealing with the stress of his daughter being gone for 2 years and raising his granddaughter. So I didn't see plaid on Papa O'Toole, but that's because even though he came here to confront,
he's cool as
Oliver,
a cucumber.
He doesn't have that internal stress.
He does not have that. Even though he came to confront him, he's not dealing with the internal stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I feel like now we should have all worn plaid to this episode. So we had our first surprise. Oh, your dad's dead. Second surprise, oh, your dad's not dead. And third surprise, oh, he's not your biological father. So we get bam, bam, bam for Oliver. Poor man is just doesn't even know what to think anymore because Joe tells him the story that your father is dead, but it's the father you never knew. And so the man that his mother had ran off with was his biological father, Harvey Schmitz, which appalls Oliver. I'm a Schmitz?
I mean, to be honest, going from like a very Irish, sounding, O'Toole, that's very fits him with the suit to
and the male legacy as well. Just the USPS legacy of the O'Toole family to a Schmitz.
Years. Yeah.
To a Schmitz. Somebody who did a bunch of scams and get-rich-quick schemes. I mean, that's a huge blow for a man like Oliver.
Right, and to the fact because the whole part of the story here is that the mother had an affair with this Harvey person, ended up pregnant. Joe stayed with her, but then she kept having that affair. And for Oliver too, like he is such a faithful man as we've seen, and to know that that's his father. He just has this entire identity crisis at this point.
That was the saddest story for me. Did that strike you guys as just horribly sad? That,
it did, yeah.
That just the mother's affair, how she would not leave it alone, even though her husband stayed with her for all those years.
Right. And raised, his child as his own.
Yes. And then when the divorce happened, he took him. He took him. He wasn't even his son. And he could have just laid everything bare right there. I'm not your real father. Go with your mother. And he didn't. He completely spared Oliver and he took him. That was just the saddest story to me.
And for me too, I was thinking like, poor Oliver, like all of this time, like, what, let's say he's like 38,
Something.
40,
Yeah.
you know, all those years of thinking you are a person, you know, your faith and your family and your, you know, your history, your ancestry, he's a very proud person of who he is and who his grandfather was and who they've made him to be. And then all of a sudden it's taken away from him like that, you know, and it's just very, I can't imagine going home to my parents and them saying, guess what? You're actually adopted and we're not your real parents. Like, what? Like, are you kidding me? You couldn't have told me this when I was like 18, you know?
Right.
And I mean, I understand to a point of like, you know, sometimes you want to keep those things close until they're ready for it. But I feel like once you're 18, you're an adult and you deserve to know who you are, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
but see, by the time he was 18, they had already, I think they had already split from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
and the other thing too, with the mom, with Oliver's mom, who's nameless actually, because we don't know her name, which is also interesting, is the fact that when I was listening to this story and how she would like just run off or whatever, I was like, oh my goodness, Oliver, you have inadvertently repeated history by marrying Holly. But you've broken it. You've broken
by
that
not
cycle,
having
but
a
not
child,
right? And you've not, you know, pursued those things, and you let her go, and everything's been good. But I was like, man,
that's
first
a really
your mom,
good point.
Then your wife. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
What?
That's a really, really good point. I hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, obviously, I thought of a cycle, but you know that all the women in his life just up and leave. But I hadn't thought of it that way, that he was breaking a cycle. That's a really good point, because he could have fallen victim to it with how loyal he is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Oliver's dealing with a lot, and then he gets more news. He goes to meet the lawyer, and he calls upon Shane, who is, we'll talk about it a little more, who ends up being he's like support truly in this movie. And he learns that
surprise number
dad, 4 you're rich now, because your biological dad was rich and he left you significant funds.
What an emotional roller coaster. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know?
And here's the other thing too. I was thinking, had Shane never ended up there in the DLO, or let's say Shane left in the last movie, like, who would he have gone to? Nobody. The first person he calls is Shane, and I was like, oh, yeah, he's calling Shane.
He's got a person.
Well, and when Shane says, "Is there somebody I can call, or is there someone you need to call?" Oliver says, "There's nothing to do at this point," and I just thought, "Oh, isn't that so sad?" That there's no one to call. There's no one to inform. It's just so sad to me.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the ending even better, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Yes. And so Oliver then goes to his dad and then accuses him of only being there for money. And it's like, Oliver, like, calm down.
I mean, the guy's going through a lot, but for him to jump that quickly to that kind of...
He's projecting, you know.
Oh, he's
definitely projecting. Oh, yeah. Because it's not even like... It doesn't even make sense, you know, like... Right. Joseph O'Toole, he's not a cocky person. He doesn't appear that way unless he's like a double-sided kind of man, but he doesn't appear that way. He appears like a really nice, caring dad.
Well, and he's never come around asking for money either. You know, it's not a trend. A lot of people have estranged parents or estranged siblings or estranged relatives of some kind who show up every once in a while asking for money. This is the first time we've seen him. You know, there's not any history of him being a gold digger or anything like that. You know, so there's no trend. Yeah, it was just that was sad. That was really sad.
And then he lays another accusation of that he kept his mom away from him, and Joe's like, no, I gave her the address. And, you can tell he doesn't really want to tell Oliver that, but he's got to clear the air of, like, you're making me out to be the bad guy, but I did everything I could to keep contact with your mom.
Mm-hmm. I will say Joseph O'Toole is like MVP of this episode.
He certainly is.
He
Absolutely.
really is. I mean, first of all, he protected his son. And he even says, he's like, you know what? I'm going to just lay it out here for you. I never said anything bad about your mother. Do you
never said a bad word.
Like, do you know how hard that would be? Like, your wife cheated on you multiple times. She leaves you with the man, like, she leaves you with the son that's not really your biological son. She like writes every now and then is kind of what I could gather. And she's traveling the world and then she just disappears off the face of the planet. Like, what? And he doesn't complain about it. He doesn't say to Oliver, you know what? Be thankful that I took you in because you could have been on the streets. Like, you know what I'm saying?
He could have held that over his head forever if he was a vindictive man.
Yeah.
He could have held that over his head from the time he was 13 years old. And he didn't. He said, why no father would do, oh gosh, I'm going to cry. No father would do that to a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just had a thought as you were talking, Kaycee, because we talked about how his mother traveled the world and she would like occasionally send like a postcard. And it just made me think like maybe because we all kind of wondered why was Oliver so attracted to Holly and like what they didn't, but maybe like he saw a bit of his mother and Holly and he was like searching for that connection with his mother and he found that in Holly, even though he didn't really connect it that way in his brain, but that's what he was doing. He saw his mother in Holly and wanted
that's a really good
wanted that relationship.
Yeah. And he probably had a very romanticized view of his mother.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially after hearing his dad yell at his at the mom. And if he's only hearing one side, so if he comes, like, let's say he's walking down the stairs as a 13-year-old kid, he hears his dad say those words, like, if you can't do it my way, then,
it's over.
And then she probably just stormed out and never returned. Right. So of course in his 13-year-old mind,
mom's a good guy. Yeah.
Mom's a good guy.
Yeah. And she's probably, who doesn't want to travel the world, and with Oliver being very, I feel like he is the type of person who loves that kind of stuff, like history and just the ancient world and that kind of like world history thing.
Studying about it, yes. Venturing out,
not venturing. Not venturing out. More of the history of like, seeing the 7 wonders of the world and just like hearing about it and like
hearing about it. Yeah.
And
no, because Washington D.C. was, I think is about as far as he was going to get at that point.
I mean, he didn't go to Paris, so
No, he didn't. Life. That's what I mean.
But no, I mean, I feel like he's the type of person who would like that, and his mom probably knew that about him and was probably writing these things of like, we just traveled down the Nile River and we saw all these wonderful things and wish you could be here. So he's having a very romanticized memory of his mom. She's, in fact, not a great person, honestly.
Yeah. Yes. And then it gets even sadder because Joe shows Oliver this giant stack of letters like, I wrote all these to you. And then even though Oliver is presented with this, he throws them in the trash. And I'm like,
Oliver, the man who values the written word and letters more than anything, throws all of them in the trash. Did you guys love that Joe had them? Because he knows his son. He knows his son. He knows the way he thinks. He speaks his son's language, even if he doesn't speak it himself. He knows how to talk to his son. And he pulls those letters right out. I'm like, he brought them. He brought them with him. It shows just how much he cares. The fact that he kept them. When return to sender was stamped and he got it back, those things easily could have gone in the trash or the recycling bin. And he kept every one of them. And MVP, just like you said. MVP.
Yeah. And those letters went thunk. That trash. Boom. I was like, whoa. Again, angry Oliver, like, One more layer.
I know it's
Oh.
escalating.
It is very much escalating.
Very much. Well, he had clams at lunch, remember?
I did notice that.
Yeah. I didn't catch it until this time watching through for
Same
this
here.
podcast. She said, "How are the clams?" I went, "Oh, he's eating clams."
All right, so sidetracking up this a little bit, let's get back to Phoebe's story. So they're able to locate Phoebe, and we get this very sweet connection between the grandfather and Norman, because the grandfather worked from social services.
Love it.
And Norman really bonds to Phoebe. They have lunch together. He tells her stay cool, and connects with her over the fact that he too was bullied, just like she kind of is with her mother. And they're able to track down, I believe his name is Clay, who was the helicopter pilot, and who was the one who wrote the letter. And so they go to the clinic, and he's not really able to provide any details, just that your mother was a good woman, and he doesn't think that she's still alive.
Well, and all of the hoopla that the media is putting out about her, he's able to tell her that it's not true. She's not a traitor. She's a good American patriotic soldier, and she never deserted. You know, and I think even though the hope of seeing her mother again at this point is almost extinct, it's a teeny tiny little flame, that because Clay didn't say she's dead, Clay said, I don't believe she's alive. So that's going to take the flame from here to here.
Yeah.
It's still there, but it's pretty much extinct.
Yeah.
But the fact that she was not a traitor gave Phoebe something, you know?
Yeah. I was very surprised at the end of this letter story. Like, I thought maybe we were going to find out more about her. Like, she's a prisoner of war. We're going to go rescue her, but we can't tell you that. But like when Chuck was like, I don't believe she's still living, I was like, Clay. I was like, wait, what? And then I paused and I'm like, but there's like, what if, you know, when we keep going and, you know, Norman and Rena at the end, you know, deliver Phoebe a little gift, I'm like, that's literally
the end of the story.
Like, how sad. So like, that is so sad for Phoebe. I mean, can you imagine being 14 or 15 and just like like, that's it? And also to her, she lost her father, we find that out later too. So like, she's now lost two parents to, you know, who were in the military. And her grandfather is obviously getting older, and you know, it's just like,
how much time does she have left with him?
This poor girl.
I can't even imagine being 14 years old and I mean, for me, I felt like I had enough to deal with when I was 14. I can't even imagine holding all of this on my shoulders at 14 years old. And see, there we go again. Joseph O'Toole spared Oliver from having to deal with this kind of tragedy at 13 years old because he didn't want his son, the boy that he looked on as his and only his. He didn't want him to deal with that kind of burden at such a young and impressionable age. Weaving, Martha.
So we get a bit of a bittersweet ending to Phoebe's story, but the story for Oliver and Joe is not over. And I will say, pretty much from this point in the movie on, is like, I just love every minute of it.
I know.
So we had the DLO scene. Let's start there. It's evening. Rita, Norman, they say their goodbyes. Shane says her goodbye, or so we're led to believe, until then Oliver's like, you haven't left yet, have you? And there she is.
The fact that she stayed, you know, because we talked about if Shane hadn't been there, he would have no one. And she knows that. She knows that. And she just doesn't want to leave him alone. I've seen so many scenes where somebody feels like they're grieving alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hear someone outside, or they see someone just sitting so that they don't have to be alone. And just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful that you just don't want to leave someone alone.
And also too with this, there's tension. I don't know that I would say there's a lot of romantic tension in this movie.
Not this point.
But Shane is such a good friend to Oliver.
Is.
Like she really is. I mean, and look how far they've come from like butting heads and Shane running out, quitting all the time to, you know, taking on this burden of Oliver's. And I mean, she's such a good friend.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Kaycee, when you said that, running away, running out, quitting. In From Paris with Love, she ran out. In this one, she stayed.
Mm-hmm.
I just had that revelation. Oh my gosh, I just had that thought. Just
and she says it too later too. She tells Oliver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I particularly love about this part is, so one of my favorite scenes actually in From Paris with Love is when Shane tells Oliver forgiveness is doing the right thing, because she knows exactly in that moment what Oliver needs. It's not necessarily what she would do. She knows that may not work out well for her, but she does the right thing to tell him, you need to forgive Holly. And the same thing happens in here. She says, your faith has been shaken, and you know where you need to go to find that again. She's able to identify that Oliver needs to come to his faith, even though she does not have that faith. But she recognizes this is what Oliver needs, and is able to give that to him. And that's like the definition of a good friend.
Yeah.
Well, and I also love that she said, Oliver, don't be cynical. It's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, she, in many instances, is the definition of cynical.
Mm-hmm.
But she knows that he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the one that tells him, Oliver, don't be cynical. It's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she can't bear to see him be cynical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just cannot bear it. It's almost like, wait a minute. You're not supposed to be that. That's my job. You know?
Yeah. Love how Shane calls Oliver out multiple times, especially in these last two movies, without like being disparaging towards him or being snarky or
being like a nasty way.
Like she just calls him out in a very calm manner, like very respectfully though. And to drive the point across. I mean, it's so good. I love it. I love how the relationship has, is evolving now. And they're definitely kindred spirits. They're connected. They're very much connected.
And then
very unlikely, very unlikely kindred spirits, but they're kindred spirits nonetheless.
And then of course we have the beautiful moment where Shane tells him, all I want to do is walk over to you, put my arms around you, and tell you that everything is going to be okay. But I know that's not what you want right now.
Since when did that stop you?
And then drop the stuff and what I call an attack hug. Because she just goes,
drop the bag.
When I watched that scene the first time and she says all those words and there's like that pause, I'm like, what's she gonna do? Is she just gonna be like, but you know where to find me? But then he says that and I'm like, oh, that is an open invitation.
Yes, that is an invitation.
And you know he wanted it.
He did.
No, he wanted it.
He did.
He so wanted it. If he hadn't wanted it, number one, he wouldn't have said that.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, he never would have reciprocated. And he was holding on to her so tightly. You know he wanted it and you know he needed it.
Yeah. And he couldn't even look her straight in the eye when he kind of had to admit, like, I need this hug.
Yeah.
You know? Because again, he's not by nature an emotional kind of guy when it comes to his own emotions. It's very much buried and complicated and hidden. Yeah. And so this is like all the walls are coming down at this point. I mean, especially for Oliver to get a hug from someone who is not his betrothed and not just like a casual friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like his turning point. It's his turning point where the walls come down, just like Shane's bag, and his walls go down with him.
And the walls come tumbling down.
And then, so right after that, he follows Shane's advice. He goes to the church. He goes to look for his dad, but his dad's already left the motel.
He goes to look for the letters.
He runs for those letters. And I love this part because the emotion is so raw, and Eric does it so well. It's like you can feel that like desperation of like, I need to get these letters. I need to fix this.
I know the garbage cans rattling all over the place. You know, it's just, he even checks another garbage can that he knows he didn't throw it in. You know, just,
like just in case it hopped, 20 feet.
No. Eric's what, Kaycee?
Eric's performance in this is top notch. I mean, and here's the thing too. He doesn't cry, but you see the eyes well up several times.
Oh,
and you see the tension in his face, and you see like every emotion at play. Like he doesn't have to say a whole lot, but you can just see it, and that is just incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, he can't find the letters. He can't find his dad, and so it's the next morning, and he's taking his anger out on the porch swing.
Okay, we gotta say it together. We gotta say it together.
What the Sam
Hill? And then Shane comes out. What the Sam Hill? You must really be upset. And what's interesting is, so Shane calls him out on again, and then he reciprocates by throwing Steve at her. And
that's a low blow.
I know, and I love that she's just like, no, we're not. No, stop. Like, we're not going there.
If you want to get a rise, if you're trying to get a rise out of me, I'd stick with the porch swing. I'm like, snap, girl.
And so yeah, she continues to tell him like, your dad's not the one that left. You're the one who, basically you're the one preventing your dad from coming back. And then he tells her, well, he actually did leave this time. And then I have no plans to leave if it matters. This scene gets me, okay? Like, this is where I get a little romantic. Those two words make me...
I'm sorry, what? What?
Shush.
Kaycee, you get the bucket, I'll get the mop.
I put in my notes, I literally put in my notes, cue the puddles. And you know me, that's not me. Like, this scene melts me.
You get the bucket, I'll get the mop. We get to mop her up for a change.
Yeah, you guys do the heavy work. My muscles are tired of holding that mop. Oh, and then the big thing we got to talk about. Okay, this is a discussion for this scene. After she says it matters, he looks at her very coyly. Do you know what I'd like to do right now? In the stupid phone interrupts them. Now, there's been debate amongst the postables and I don't know, Twitter feeds or something. What do you think he wanted to do? So let's go around. And what do you guys think he meant when he said what I'd like to do right now?
I don't know what he wanted to do. I don't know what he meant. I don't know what he meant with those words, but what he wanted to do is he wanted to kiss her. Oh yeah.
That's one theory. That's one theory.
Yeah, that's one theory.
Kaycee, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think he's wanted to kiss her since the time that he's had to call back Shane, come back, Shane. Kind of kidding, but I mean, at least in the last movie when they get the lip stare on, at 3 a.m. on the porch swing, he definitely wanted to kiss her, and I'm sure he does want to kiss her. But in that specific moment, I don't know that he wanted to kiss her. Like, there's a lot of emotional turmoil in this, and to go from that to kissing kissing her is like, it's almost out of place. I feel like it's still, we're still coming off of those emotions. I think he wanted to in that scene. I don't know. Hug her.
I do have a theory.
Oh.
My theory is that line was a callback to the previous night when she said, all I want to do right now. And so I think he wants to like hold her and hug her.
He wants to hug her.
Mhm.
That's my theory, but there is many people who believe that he wanted to kiss her, which maybe he did as well. Okay, so we have that beautiful moment interrupted by a phone call. Technology, let's throw the phone away.
But did you notice Shane cried? Like,
yeah,
she like wipes her face. Like when Oliver says, "Do you want to know what I want to, whatever," and then the phone rings, she's like composing herself. I was like,
but the phone call, as annoying as it is in this moment, brings beautiful news that
It's a good thing.
Oliver's father left a forwarding address. Cue the Oz. And so Oliver goes to the address and visits his father, and they have this very fun conversation where when Joe asks him about Shane, oh, she's very efficient.
Efficient?
Fess up!
I love two things about that. Number one, he's making him relax. He's making him get a lot more informal with his words. And number two, he called him O'Toole. Just
reaffirming the identity.
Yes.
Reaffirming that identity.
Yes. Just come on, O'Toole, fess up. He's making him relax, and he is once again reiterating, you are an O'Toole.
We have our ending scene, the birthday party for Shane, and her cake that says happy birthday, Shan. Because it was either that or happy birthday. And Rita and Norman got their gifts together. They went in together, so they are finally clicking again and not so awkward.
Took them forever.
And we learned that Oliver's dad went back and got the letters, and so they're not lost letters anymore.
Oh.
And the best part about this moment is that look between Oliver and Shane, like, that is a smoldering look.
Yeah.
Here comes the smolder. If you're a Tangled fan, you'll get that.
Oh yeah. No, I got that. Now that you said that, I didn't think about that, but I do know what you're saying. And he does that little, I don't know, the face.
Here comes the smolder. This usually works for me. This is kind of an off day. All right.
My kids are watching Tangled right now.
Oh, well, there you go.
That look. I will retweet that GIF as much as I can. I love that look.
Oh yeah.
Like that's like, whew.
That's what? What?
I don't know. What did I say? I'm not a romantic. What?
No.
So we end on this beautiful note with Shane and Oliver and their look, and Rita and Norman going in on their gift together, and resolution between Oliver and his dad. So it's a very beautiful way to end this movie. It is.
And it's a beautiful way to end a sad one, because we think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I just thought of this. I mean, Papa O'Toole, he forgives, like, there's all the forgiveness in the world.
Yeah, there's no grudge. There's
no grudge. Not like, it's just so seamless.
Right. Yeah. Even though Oliver said a lot of kind of nasty things to him.
Yeah.
A lot.
I mean, this is just over the course of a few days, a week. Can you imagine like Oliver 15 years and even prior to that?
Yeah.
Like, and having an angsty teenager. Oof.
I can only imagine Oliver as an angsty teenager. I mean, can you even imagine?
I feel like young Oliver, after his mother, leaving, and then after her not sending letters when, they moved, I feel like he would have been the type to be like totally respectful, fine, and cool on the outside to everybody else except for at home with his dad. Like, I feel like it'd be short.
No, that's what I meant.
Answers,
That's what I meant. Can you imagine Oliver as an angsty teenager with dad?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready for some trivia?
I am so ready.
No.
Come on, Kaycee. Where's your enthusiasm?
Oh, I do love this movie, but I didn't take as many notes as I should have. So we'll see how this goes.
All right. I'll start with an easy one. What is the name of the book that Norman's cousin Cornell wrote?
Sands of Many Lands.
Correct. Sands of Many Lands. Number 2. Where is Oliver's dad staying?
The Mesa Motor Inn, room 204.
Kaycee beat you to it, but yes, Mason Motor Inn.
Almost choked on my spit there. So.
I know. I heard the first part. Mesa Motor Inn, room 204.
Mm-hmm.
All right, question 3. How old was Phoebe when her mother went missing?
12.
Yes, 12. Good. What does Norman tell Oliver that he and Rita had on their date? To eat?
The Gladiator special
With?
with extra sausage.
There you go. Next question. We're getting harder. What is Oliver's grandfather's name and his great-great-grandfather's nickname?
Chester
Joseph
Stanley
Lindsay
O'Toole
O'Toole.
and Mad Dog O'Toole.
Yes. Chester Stanley O'Toole and Mad Dog O'Toole.
And Mad Dog was a Pony Express writer.
That's true. All right, last question. Since what year has an O'Toole been a part of the Postal
1787.
Service? Yes, 1787.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys knocked trivia out of the park, and
Cammy knocked trivia out of the park. Kaycee didn't know anything.
You knew the Mesa Motor Hotel, and you knew Chester Stanley O'Toole.
And I did know, what's it called? I did know Phoebe was 12. I just didn't say it fast enough.
Yeah, sure you did.
well, Postables, it has been so much fun to talk about this episode, which Oliver goes on an incredible identity journey.
An emotional roller coaster.
Yes.
No kidding.
An emotional roller coaster. And we are so excited that next week we get to talk to the man himself, Eric Mabius.
Woo!
So we'll see you guys then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye!
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Deliver Me a Podcast. If you want to know what's going to happen next week, be sure you are following us on Twitter at Deliver Me a Pod and on Instagram at Deliver Me a Podcast. We also have a merch store where you can buy tons of Postables things for you and your friends. We'll see you next week.